The New Orleans Saints have released wide receiver Bryan Edwards. But in this case, it is. Look, I said on the last episode of the State of the Saints podcast that the way that Bryan Edwards played in that game on Sunday versus the Los Angeles Chargers, that was going to be one of those games where a guy is looking for another job. I mentioned the Seattle Sea Dragons. I mentioned the Memphis Showboats. I'm pretty sure that he's probably going to be playing over there. Look, Bryan Edwards had ample opportunities to make plays. You think about the guys that weren't playing in this game at the wide receiver position. No Michael Thomas. No Chris Olave. No Rashid Shaheed. I didn't even see Keith Kirkwood out there. If he was, I didn't see him. So you had so many opportunities to make plays. But not only did you not make plays, but you cost your team 2 touchdowns 2 times in a row. And I mentioned this also. I got nothing but respect for Bryan Edwards. The people around me, where I stay in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, technically Conway, where Bryan Edwards is from. People always ask me, what is going on with Bryan Edwards? Do you think Bryan Edwards going to make the team? Bryan Edwards, I grew up with the guy. Bryan Edwards, he went to my school. All these different things. So I don't get any pleasure as saying these things about Bryan Edwards, but the truth is the truth. I was not shocked when the waiver wire came out and his name was on it. I'm just going to be serious. But this could be a possible wake-up call for a guy like Bryan Edwards to take advantage of these opportunities. You're not going to get too many opportunities like the one you had in week 2 of preseason versus the Chargers. So hopefully, if he gets another opportunity in the National Football League, he captures it and not just waste it. Look, he has been in the league way too long. I'm looking at his profile right now. Bryan Edwards came into the league in 2020, right? He's a 3rd-round pick out of South Carolina. This is a big physical guy who could win 50-50 balls, but he has to work on his blocking. And I know some Saints fans may not want to hear what I'm about to say, but this is one of the main reasons why when you all are talking about Traquan Smith, oh, Traquan, he trash. Traquan, he garbage. Traquan, they need to release him. This is the main reason why Traquan Smith remains on the New Orleans Saints team. Because like Traquan or not, one thing that you know about Trey Day, that Trey is going to be able to block on the outside and does a really good job at that. Now, I know that we fall in love with the acrobatics. We fall in love with the pirouette catches, the 50-50 balls, the Brandon Moss, you got Moss type moments. But for those moments to actually take place, you need individuals like Traquan Smith. And I'm going to say this also. I know some people may not want to hear this too, but I am very confident that Traquan Smith will still be on this team, even though he hasn't played in preseason. Because even though Traquan hasn't played in preseason, there has not been many wide receivers that could do what he does. And I don't see too many wide receivers, for the exception of A.T. Perry, that has separated themselves from the pack. Now, we can mention Shaq Davis. He had some really good catches. He caught the pass for like 42 yards, and he should have had a touchdown, and I get all that. But I'm talking about as far as blocking. I'm talking about as far as, doing the grimy things. I didn't see too many of these wide receivers. I seen some really good catches, but the way that the Saints are structured, you know who your number 1, 2, and 3 are going to be. That's going to be Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, whatever order you want to put them in, those are your guys. And everybody else is basically a part of the depth chart. So that's the reason why I feel that the Saints always keep a guy like Traquan Smith around. And Traquan not playing might have been beneficial to him because these other guys could not separate themselves from the pack. But Bryan Edwards, I'm sorry, brother, but I think that it was justified for you to get cut. But this is a learning experience for you. Hopefully you get better. You get another opportunity in the National Football League. But if not, like I said, there's always the Seattle Sea Dragons. there's always the Memphis Showboats. All right. There's nothing wrong with the USFL or the XFL. All right. That is a great opportunity for guys to continue their lifelong dream of playing sports. And if you're blocking like that, they need you over there. But let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk a little bit about Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham comes back to practice on Wednesday after missing a few days. Of course, we know about the situation that happened out in Los Angeles. Jimmy Graham was found kind of out of sorts. They thought that he was under the influence, but it turns out he was dealing with seizures. It came out that he has a lifelong condition dealing with seizures, and that's very, very serious. I'm glad that nothing happened to Jimmy. Once again, things like this that often happen always leads or ends in tragedy, rather. And I'm just glad that he was able to get the help that he needed. I'm glad that somebody stepped in, was able to address the condition that he had, got the help that he needed, and now he's back at practice. And the media talked to head coach Dennis Allen, and Dennis Allen talked a little bit about Jimmy Graham returning to practice.
Yeah, look, I thought he looked good today. I think, we're going to keep evaluating that, but, certainly that was good to see the type of day he had today. He's a big target. And made some plays in a contested environment, a couple of plays across the middle, a couple of red zone plays. So things that I've seen him do in the past, I saw him doing today, and that's a good sign.
I said this before. When I look at Jimmy Graham, I don't look at Jimmy Graham being that Jimmy Graham back in 2012. I think that we look at Jimmy Graham and we want him to be that guy, but at 36 years old, he's not that guy anymore. But that doesn't mean that he can't provide something to the New Orleans Saints. But I'm looking at the tight end position, and I'm looking at guys like Juwan Johnson, who is stepping up. I'm looking at Foster Moreau stepping up. I'm looking at Taysom Hill going into his second season at the tight end position, stepping up. There's going to be packages for him to be that offensive weapon he's been since he put on the Saints uniform. But Jimmy Graham, there's still a spot for him. Like Dennis Allen mentioned in a press conference, he still was winning the 50-50 balls. He still was catching those passes on the sidelines. And if you ever seen Jimmy Graham up close, you know that he is physically imposing compared to some of the other players around the National Football League. So you always have that advantage in the red zone. Thus the reason I feel like he will stay around. But I'm not looking for Jimmy Graham to be 2012 Jimmy Graham. I don't expect for the Saints to use him as often as they did back in the days when he was dominating the league, catching 16 touchdowns in a year. But there's still that great element in the red zone. And we know that the Saints last season, they struggled in the red zone. They had a lot of issues. They were able to march the ball downfield in some cases, but they could not punch it in. And also, I got to keep it real. Derek Carr has had a issue throughout his career putting the ball in the end zone, in the red zone. So having a guy like Jimmy Graham out there that can win those matchups, having a guy on the other side and Michael Thomas that can win those matchups, and then you have Chris Olave, who is elusive and has a little wiggle to him to a point where he can actually get open in the red zone. It provides a great element and a plethora of offensive weapons for Derek Carr to be able to increase those red zone woes that he's had throughout his career. So it's good to see Jimmy Graham back. I'm excited about it. Happy to see Jimmy back on the field. Happy to see him in really good shape and in a really good condition. And looking forward to seeing how the Saints are going to use him, because I really feel like Jimmy is more than likely going to make the 53 pending any type of injury or setback due to what happened over the weekend. And finally, talk about a guy who is exciting, a guy who is really turning heads, and that is defensive tackle Malcolm Roach. Malcolm Roach has approached training camp in a completely different way. He looks faster, he looks stronger, and it seems like he understands what his role is with the New Orleans Saints. And he also talked to the media, and he spoke a little bit about coming into the National Football League and growing as a pro.
I remember coming here undrafted, free agent, not knowing what was going on, still having that feeling sometimes, and that's what keep me going. But I always told myself, I'm going to have fun every day I'm in this building. I'm also going to work my tail off. But in doing this, I know I'm going to enjoy every moment I'm in here, because tomorrow not promised in this league. And, I learned that at an early age, at an early at an early start in this league. Tomorrow is not promised. So I'm going hard and, making the most every day while I'm here and just having fun, enjoying it. Like, who wouldn't have fun? Like, get to play football for a living, so I love what I do.
This is a really good rotation on the interior that the New Orleans Saints have. This is something that has been missing over the last few years. I feel like the Saints had strong guys on the interior. You had guys, like Malcolm Roach that was out there, Shy Tuttle, Davion Yamada, like all these different guys that were big and they were strong. But when it came to certain elements of athleticism, I feel like they lacked. And that was the main reason why I felt like when the Saints went up against, quarterbacks that can be able to run, they were able to run up the middle. They were able to juke that defensive tackle out of his shoes in order for them to gain some yards. But now the Saints have some athletes on the interior. They got the Cullen Saunders. They got the Brian Brzee. They got the Nate Shepherds. And they got the Malcolm Roaches. And if you can actually put this all together, I think this is a recipe for success. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been hearing a lot of things about this front four, all right? The rotation of the defensive line. I've heard about how Tano Pasio is looking really good. I'm hearing about how Malcolm Roach is approaching the game. I'm hearing about all these different things, but I have to say, I need to see this thing in real time because we have to ask ourselves, got to be real. We've been talking about the Saints offensive lines and their struggles. And we know that when the media comes out and they talk about the defensive line, they're evaluating these guys based on them going up against the Saints offensive line, who hasn't really put it all together just yet. So you have to ask yourself, how impressive is it really? Is this the Brandon Coleman treatment? Or is this the Emmanuel Butler treatment? Y'all know what I'm talking about, man. Brandon Coleman. Oh, he taking over. He wrecking shop.
See, I heard it all before, all of your lies.
Oh, Emmanuel Butler. Oh, look what he did against the Chargers secondary.
See, I heard it all before, all of your lies.
We get all excited. We start pounding the table, trying to lobby for these guys. And then when they get some real action, all of a sudden they just look like, like what the hell are they doing out there? Hopefully this is not the case, but I seen this in a game with Malcolm Roach. I'm seeing what the media is seeing. I'm seeing what fans are seeing, and I'm excited to see if he can actually do this consistently throughout the entire season. If he does, then he's going to set himself up for a nice little payday. And that's what he wants, man. That's what you want to do. Like maybe you won't be able to get the money that you want from the New Orleans Saints, but if you play well, you can play yourself into a situation where you can be taking care of your kids, and your kids, But I would love to hear from you. What do you all think about Bryan Edwards getting cut, Jimmy Graham's return, and Malcolm Roach's advent? Comment down below, like and share this video. Thank you so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast. Previous episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Anchor FM. And also thank you to everybody that subscribed to the channel. And if you have not already, please check out the interview that I conducted with Steve Weish of NFL Network. Now, come on, y'all, man. I'm out here lobbying. I'm out here trying to get the best of the best to come on the show to provide expertise about the NFL. So come on, man. Give it a listen. Tell me what you think. If you have not checked it out, once again, interview with Steve Weish that is available right now on the State of the Saints podcast. Also, check out the Gumbo Pot Sports Podcast YouTube channel, Gumbo Pot Sports Podcast, and also GumboPotSports.com. GumboPotSports.com. Get the up-to-date information about the New Orleans Saints as well as teams around the NFL. Till next time, all I got to say is, who dat?